Cindy Brison has been a Nebraska Extension educator and registered dietitian for the past 25 years. She earned her bachelor's degree in home economics and dietetics and her master's degree in community nutrition and home economics from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. The focus of Cindy's work is in nutrition and health with a specialization in food safety, and she is very embedded in the local food scene in Nebraska.
Welcome, everyone. Like she said, my name's Cindy Brison. I work out of the Douglas Sarpy Extension Office here in Omaha, and this is huge. Cottage Foods is huge. By the time you're done today with this part of the presentation, Terry has been so kind as to put a link in the chat box. I would ask that all of you go to that link and fill in your information, because after we're done today, you will be ready to get a hold of the Department of Ag and register for a cottage food registration license, and you'll be ready to go. So, I just need that information so I can send you your certificate. So all will be good. All will be good. So we're going to go ahead and get started because there's a lot to talk about. This has just been updated. This is hot off the press. So LB 304 came about in September of 2019. And in 2020, we, like in the summer of 2020 or the fall of 2020, we worked with the Department of Ag and local health departments to adapt a program for food safety training from Cottage Foods from Minnesota. And we got it up and running. And since then, we've had almost 400 people go through this class. I just checked this morning, almost 800 people are licensed or are registered cottage food producers in the state. That's incredible. So when we're all done with this, you'll be ready to sell whatever it is you want to sell by this afternoon if you just get on the Department of Ag site and sign up. Today we're going to talk about what the cottage food law states, what kind of foods you can sell, which is usually the biggest question, and safe food handling practices as you're producing these things. So this training has been endorsed by the Department of Ag and the Douglas County and the Lincoln-Lancaster County Health Department. So it fulfills all the needs for you to become a registered cottage food vendor. So kind of an overview of the cottage food law. This came about because initially senators wanted to offer an option for people who lived in rural areas to be able to supplement their income by selling baked goods, cakes, cookies, honey, spices, things like that. And it's grown because of the pandemic, and people lost their jobs or people were staying home, that all of a sudden, selling decorated cookies and banana bread has become a huge industry in the state, and that's great. So the law states, and this is something that I'm clarifying today because it's kind of changed. The law states that as a cottage food producer, you prepare foods in your home or any other area that is not a licensed kitchen. So if you have a mobile home that's yours and you're making cookies out there to sell, you can do that. As long as you're not in a restaurant or a licensed kitchen, you're fine. That's what other area means. You're going to be able to sell anything that's not a TCS food. A TCS food stands for time temperature control for safety. And that just means it either has to be kept cold or it has to be kept hot. So anything that is shelf stable for the most part is what you can sell. And you sell directly to the consumer. And at the end, I'll give you the website again to register with the Nebraska Department of Ag. But that's one of the requirements also, that you're registered. There's no cost to the registration. You just have to fill out the paperwork. If you're a cottage food producer in Douglas County and you're going to sell at a farmer's market, then you have to go one step further and just get online and fill out a farmer's market, just an application. There's no cost to it. They just want to know what you're selling at a local farmer's market. In Lancaster County or within a 3-mile radius, you also are required to obtain a cottage food operation permit with Lancaster County. So always check with your local health departments. And I'll give you all those phone numbers and all that information. And I will also, when I send you your certificate, I will also send you a copy of this presentation today. So if you want to go back and look at some of the things, if you have questions, please do. So again, the Nebraska Pure Food Act, LB 304, was passed in 2019. And it's just strictly for people to sell food from their home and not a licensed kitchen. So any type of non-TCS foods, you just make sure that, it's important that you fill out all the paperwork. When you do sell your foods, like let's say you do go sell sourdough. For interesting fact, in 2021, the most popular type of bread to be sold as part of the cottage food industry was sourdough. So if you were selling sourdough bread from your house, or if you were selling it at a farmer's market, you would have at your booth, you would have a placard or some sort of piece of paper that has a statement that it says something like, this food was prepared in a kitchen that is not subject to regulation and inspection by the regulatory authority and may contain allergens. And that's pretty much all you need to do. It's important that you have that signage there. You can put it on each individual thing you're selling. You can put the sign there on your table, or you can put the sign in your house when people come to purchase your food. You just need signage of some sort there that says basically that statement. And if you're operating in Lancaster County, you should also indicate that the product was made by a cottage food operation. So one of the requirements is that when you're selling things that they're labeled, and the basic label just has to have your name and address on it and what the food is. So if you're selling chocolate chip cookies, it says chocolate chip cookies, John Smith, here's your address. That's it. One of the things that sometimes it has to be the address of the producer. So if you don't want them to have your home address, some people do get a PO box. So all information is sent to that PO box. That's fine. You can do that, totally legal. The food has to be delivered in person or a direct delivery. So you can't go to your local coffee shop and they just sell coffee, but you make great cinnamon rolls. They'd really like to sell your cinnamon rolls. You can't sell your cinnamon rolls to the coffee shop for them to sell. If you go sit in the coffee shop you couldn't sit inside the coffee shop. You could sit outside the coffee shop. You could sell cinnamon rolls out there. This food has to be sold direct. So if you're making cinnamon rolls, they can come to your house and pick them up. You can be at a craft fair, you can be at a farmer's market and sell them directly to the consumer. You can mail them anywhere in the United States, again, directly to the consumer. And you have to make sure that you're following all the guidelines for whatever county you're in. We have lots of people that are from other states that come into Nebraska to sell cottage food or to leave Nebraska. If you're a cottage food vendor in Nebraska, and you want to go over, you want to go into Kansas or you want to go to Colorado, which is pretty popular if you live on the border. You have to follow those regulations. If you're an Iowa vendor, you have to, follow our regulations. If you have a cottage food permit in Iowa, that doesn't give you a chance to sell your foods here. One of the requirements is that you make it in a non-licensed kitchen and that you sell it directly. So that means you cannot sell it to a grocery store. You cannot sell it to a restaurant. That's called food wholesaling. There are ways that you can do that. And there are people in the cottage food business in Nebraska that have done a bang up job of selling things. And so they're taking their business one step further and they're getting into food wholesaling, but that's a different license and different specifications. You have to produce food in a licensed kitchen. So that's a little different, but the cottage food industry doesn't allow you to do that. So if you're interested in food wholesaling, get a hold of us and we'll hook you up with who you need to talk to get that done. So one of the requirements is that the producer has completed an accredited food safety course, and lucky today, this is it. So this is the course that we came up with, and it's very specific to Nebraska. And like I said, you guys are the first people that I will get back to, I will answer questions in the chat box in a second. You're very lucky that this has just been updated this week. We worked with the Department of Ag and with Lincoln, Lancaster, and Douglas County Health Departments to update this training, because things have changed as the bill is very, LB 304 is very general, and there have been lots of questions and lots of clarifications since the bill was enacted. So this shows all that. So one of the things is the producer has to take an accredited food safety course, which this will check that box for you today. And they are recommending you retake it every 3 years. Right now, there is no legislation that says that. And once you register with the Department of Ag, you're done. It doesn't say you have to keep re-registering. You just register once and you're good, unless the bill changes. But right now, it doesn't look like it. If you're producing food at a place that has a private well, you do have to have that tested yearly. And we have this extension publication on water testing and where you can get it tested. And there's lots of places in the state that you can get your water tested. So I'm going to stop here for a second, and I am going to look at so Terry has put the link in the chat box for you to fill out your name and address. So I can send, go ahead.
So far, there's only one question from Marielle Barris. She wants a list of TCS food. Is there some discrepancies between meat farmers on the bone and lard covered under the cottage food law?
And Marielle, I can answer that. So with bone broth and with meat and things like that, there's a different, there's licenses you can get to sell that at farmers markets, but that does not fall under cottage food because it is a TCS food. And we're going to get into, I have a whole list of what are TCS foods and what are not TCS foods. And sadly, what you're going to hear today is that if you're concerned, call us. We'll try to help you out. We can tell you yes or no. Or if it's one of those gray areas, then our recommendation is get it tested at a lab and see if it is a TCS food. Is the pH low enough? Is the water activity low enough for you to sell? If it is, and you have that verification, you can sell it. So lots of things have fallen under that kind of gray area, but definitely bone broth, lard, things that need to be refrigerated would not fall under the cottage food law. Good question. Okay, so selling cottage foods things. So you are responsible as a cottage food producer for making sure that you fall under all the guidelines for your local health department. So things in Lancaster County are a little different than in the rest of the state. So you need to follow whatever county you're selling under. So you want to check with your local regulatory authorities. If you're selling at a farmer's market, you want to check with your farmer's market coordinator. So just making sure you're following all the recommendations from where you're selling, whether it be from your home or at a craft fair or wherever. Again, if you're selling at a craft fair, if you're selling at a farmer's market, if you have a booth set up along the side of the road, you still want that signage that says that this was made and in a kitchen and it was not inspected, and the food may contain allergens. You do not have to put the allergens on there. It's just that it may contain allergens. So again, it's the producer is the person who produces the food in a non-licensed kitchen. You can sell it in the mail, you can sell it at produce stands, you can sell it at fairs or festivals, any place like that. You just cannot sell it to or in a licensed food establishment. So you can't go into Hy-Vee and sell your food, sit at a booth and sell your foods. So Girl Scouts can go in and sit and sell their foods, but you can't, because those are commercially produced. So again, you're selling directly to the consumer. So again, a kitchen or a food production area for cottage food means any non-licensed kitchen. That's where you're going to prepare the food, package, store it, and get it ready for sale. Things you need to think about. The person, so today, you guys will have fulfilled the requirement for being food safety trained. So you will be considered, once you register with the Department of Ag, you will be a registered cottage food producer. So if you decide tomorrow you're going to start selling sourdough bread and you need help, as long as you are in the kitchen supervising the people that are assisting you, you can have assistants in there that haven't gone through the course. There always has to be one registered cottage food producer in every kitchen when you're producing cottage food. So if you want to have assistants, they don't have to go through this training. You just have to be in there supervising. So in Lincoln, in Lancaster County, the person that's in charge of the cottage food operation has to either hold, they either have taken this course, or they have a food handler permit or a food manager permit, or they've gone through vendor training with the cottage food operation, or they've gone through farmers market training, which is coming up soon down in Lancaster County. So again, go to the county that you are interested in selling at to make sure you're following all those regulations. So you want to make sure when you're preparing your sourdough bread or your cookies or your, your honey, that you make sure that nothing else is going on in the kitchen at that time. You're not folding laundry. You don't have kids in there. You don't have pets in there. You're not preparing dinner. If you're doing cottage food preparation, that's all that's going on in that kitchen at that time. And again, no pets, no kids that are in diapers. You want to make sure that, you maintain a very clean and sanitary area when you're preparing this food, especially with pets. Their pet hair flies all over and nobody wants to buy a cookie that has dog hair in it. So the question about what can and can't be sold. So a TCS food is one that requires time and temperature control. So we make it safe. And it has a certain level of pH and it has a certain level of moisture. The more moist and the more neutral of pH a food is, the more chances that microorganisms will grow. And it either has to be kept cold or hot to stop that, or at least to control it. So a lot of the things that are TCS foods, or time temperature control for foods, are high in carbohydrates and high in proteins. And there are, if you go to the Nebraska Food Code, it kind of gives you a general rundown of what those foods are, but we're going to talk about those today. So things you can sell, and these are lots of things and variations of these things. You can sell cotton candy and banana breads, any kinds of breads, anything that doesn't have a TCS food in it. So if you're going to bake bread, like you're going to bake banana bread, it's going to have eggs in it. It's going to have milk in it, but you are baking it. And so it will be fine. Cakes, any cakes with any non-TCS fillings or frosting. So you're not going to put a cream cheese frosting on a cottage food cake. Fruit pies are fine. No sugar-free pies, because depending upon what you're using as the sugar-free sweetener, doesn't absorb the water, or doesn't keep the water activity low enough to make it shelf stable, to make it a non-TCS food. When you make a fruit pie, it usually has a ton of sugar in it. And that sugar binds with the liquid in the fruit pie, and that's what makes it safe to sit on your counter. Now, at Thanksgiving time, you're going to see in the grocery stores that they have pumpkin pie sitting out everywhere. And we get tons of phone calls. When a grocery store sells a pumpkin pie, it is a custard pie. They use preservatives and they make it in a licensed kitchen where that is safe to sit out on a counter. We don't have those preservatives that we can use in a kitchen that we would be baking our own food in. So that's why pumpkin pies, custard pies are not things you can sell. You can sell cereals that you make. You can sell nuts, popcorn, granola. You can sell popcorn balls and biscuits, candies. So you can't sell truffles, because a truffle made with cream and chocolate and rolled in some sort of, outside covering like cocoa that's not shelf stable. They need to be kept refrigerated. But if you make pralines, or if you're pralines, or if you make you know, something else, a cake pop, those are totally safe. Those are fine. Jams and jellies, you just have to be very careful about those. No pepper jelly, because the pH of pepper jelly is just right at that level that's not safe. Now, if you have a jelly recipe that you want to try and you want to see if it's safe, then you can take it to a lab and have it tested. If you are making jams and jellies to sell, we recommend that you use recipes from the Center for Home Food Preservation or Ball Canning, or go to your local extension website. They will have research-based recipes on there you can use. Very popular right now that people want to sell is jams and jellies that are made with alcohol. Two things that are a problem there. One, they're not a research-based recipe. They've never gone to a lab. And two, you could have a problem with the Liquor Commission if there's over 0.1% of alcohol left in that jelly. So it's important that if you're going to sell things that are not, you know, in those couple of places where we told you safe recipes would be, you want to have them tested in a lab just to make sure that the pH is low enough and the water activity is low enough. You can create your own seasonings. You can sell charcuterie boards with desserts. You know, you can put nuts and breads and cake pops and things like that, things that are non-TCS foods on a charcuterie board. You just cannot sell any sort of protein, any cheeses, any meats, anything like that, any dips. You can sell granola, rolls. You can sell pastries, kolaches, very, very popular. Kolaches with fruit in them. Kolaches with cream cheese would not be something you could sell. Honey, lots of people are selling local honey. And the popularity of local honey is very big because if it's local, then the flavor is different, but just don't add any flavoring to it. You can sell whole honeycombs too. You can sell dry herbs. You can sell tree syrups. You can sell trail mix. This is not a complete list. So there are lots of things that you can sell. So either check with us or check with the local health department to see if you have a question about something specific. So again, if you don't know if your food is safe to sell, call us or take it to, like in Omaha, we have a couple of labs that you can take it to. And for, I think they said about $30, you can have it checked for pH and for water activity. And if it's low enough for pH and water activity, you have that certificate that says this recipe for this jelly is safe. And you hold on to that certificate. And then if you're selling that, then if the health department ever asks you, hey, you know, where'd you get that recipe or did you have it tested? As long as you follow the same recipe every time, you're okay to sell it. So that's that gray area I was talking about. So these are, and again, I'll send you a copy of this presentation so you'll have all this information. You don't have to take notes. These are some labs we found in the state that does do testing of food for pH and for water activity. There are more. These are just the ones that I found. And there's some in Grand Island and there's one in Lincoln. The Food Processing Center in Lincoln is really good. I think they're all roughly about the same amount. And some places you can send things in, some places you can take them in. So you just need to get a hold of them and find out. Food you can't sell. So meat, chicken. Now these are things you can't sell under the cottage food law. That doesn't mean that, you know, in certain situations in farmers markets that these aren't things that you get a different license to sell. You don't sell any canned, like canned fruits, any canned pickles, any canned salsa, any canned green beans that you would home can at home. You're not selling fish, you're not selling cut fruits and vegetables. Now, you want to sell, we're waiting on this. We think it's fine. The big question of the week has been chocolate covered strawberries. If you dip a strawberry in chocolate, they were saying that you shouldn't sell it. But we are talking to food scientists. If the strawberry is fresh and you dip it in the chocolate and you sell it right away, we're trying to see if that's safe. If you want to sell apples that you dip in caramel or that you dip in chocolate, they're totally okay to sell under the cottage food law. You just can't stick a stick in them. Once you puncture the fruit, then that becomes a problem. Then it's no longer a TCS food. So if you want to dip your apple in caramel and sell it in a package along with a stick, totally okay to sell with Cottage Foods. So no cut up fruits or vegetables, no canned barbecue sauce, no jerkies, no chickens. Again, with jerky though, if you get it tested and it says the pH is low enough and the water activity is low enough, then you're fine. No raw sprouts, no ice products, no cream pies, no sugar-free pies again, no dairy products. These are all things that need refrigeration. One of the things that we have found is no butter type spreads. And we're talking like apple butter, things like that, or things, jellies made with gelatin. So there's a lot of refrigerator jam and jelly recipes where you just mix it up with some Jell-O and it's good to go and it stays in your fridge for a couple of weeks. None of those things are things you can sell because they all require refrigeration. And again, no charcuterie trays. Focaccia bread with cheeses or vegetables or meat in it. If you sell focaccia bread that has herbs on the top, wonderful, you can sell it. But if you're going to put, cheese on the top or something like that, you can't sell it. Again, no bakery products that have any cream or custard or meringue or cream cheese in it. No juices made from fruits and vegetables. Fermented foods and drinks are not allowable under cottage food. No kombucha, no sun tea, nothing like that. But again, this is not a complete list. If the website that I've added is a good website, it's from the University of Minnesota, and Douglas County has taken it and made sure that it has things that you can and can't sell on it. It's a pretty inclusive list. You might want to give that a check. All right, before we go on to safe food, Terry, were there any more questions? Oh, what is a TCS food? Yes. So let me go back. I'll start with the TCS food and then I'll go up to the next question. So think about when I started in food service, we called these things potentially hazardous foods. So these are food items that can grow bacteria if you let them sit out on the counter. So a TCS stands for time, temperature, control for safety, which means you either have to keep foods cold or hot. So but scientifically, you have to keep foods cold or hot. There are things that we keep out. There are some things that people keep out that should be refrigerated that aren't. Somebody makes a chocolate candy that's just cream and chocolate, and it's not. It has to be refrigerated, and they said, they don't refrigerate it. Well, that doesn't mean that that's safe. So, does it have to be refrigerated? Is a big thing. Do you have to have it? You have to have it cold. Does your certification expire? Not as of now, it does not. So once you sign up with the Department of Ag, you are good to go, which is not a bad thing. Is there a different certification for selling products you apply topically? Yes, that's an excellent question. So things that you would sell like lotions and other things like that, or even, this was a good question this week, dog biscuits. There is a whole nother part of the Department of Ag that handles those licenses, and that doesn't fall under the cottage food license because the cottage food license only covers non-TCS foods that humans eat. So anything you would apply topically, any sort of dog treats that you would make, just that they don't fall under this. So good questions. So yes, after this is over and I have your information, they won't come tomorrow. I promise that won't happen. But next week, I will take your addresses and I will send you all a paper certificate by mail. And then I will add you to my email address listserv. So we just had a question and answer session last week with the Department of Ag and all the health departments, where for an hour and a half, people did nothing but ask them questions. And that was great. We'll probably do that again. One of the things that came up is they wanted to know more about LLCs and taxes with cottage food production. So sometime in the near future, we're going to have a live Zoom, no charge, where where you can ask questions of people like that. And we're going to have we're going to have Jill Gifford talk probably in April or May about if you want to take your business to the next step and you want to sell to grocery stores, things like that. So I send you out an email periodically. You might not get one for months, then you might get 2 in the same week, but it's just mostly promoting things that are going on. Another thing that's going on is this summer, we have Discovery Days with UNL down on East Campus, where you guys will be available to set up as a vendor. So there's all different sorts of things that you'll see from me, but not a lot. It comes in fits and spurts. If you are registering for a nonprofit, do we put the address? So that's a good question with City Sprouts. So you can't register as a nonprofit. You can only register as a person. But the positive thing is, if you're registering as a person, like say, I'm Cindy Brison, but I'm going to use the kitchen here at the extension office. That's fine. It's not licensed. So I register as me, and I'm going to use the kitchen here at work. Totally fine, as long as work is okay with me using it. But you can't register a group, or it has to be a person. But you can put down the name of the business that you're, or the nonprofit that you're working with. So you could be Cindy Brison, and then the name of your business is Douglas Sarp Extension. So you could do it that way. All right. Good questions. Good questions. So one of the things when we talk about cottage foods and the food safety aspect is we talk about foodborne illnesses. Nobody wants to get sick. If you have ever had a foodborne illness, if you've ever had food poisoning, I will tell you, you feel like you're going to die. Throwing up and having diarrhea and just feeling dreadful is awful. But that happens sometimes because we're not handling our food safely. We're not making sure that, we're not washing our hands, things like that. So most common symptoms of foodborne illness or food poisoning is vomiting and diarrhea. It can be caused by a lot of things: viruses, bacteria, parasites. You're not going to get it from COVID. How soon can foodborne illness or food poisoning happen? Well, if it's bad enough, if what you're eating is contaminated bad enough, it could happen while you're eating it. Or it may not happen for 6 weeks. If you eat bad shellfish, or you're come in contact with the food service hepatitis, you might not get sick for 6 weeks. And do you remember what you ate 6 weeks ago? Most symptoms usually happen within a day or two. They can be really severe and life-threatening too. They can put you in the hospital, or you could die. And nobody wants to do that. So that's why we talk about general food safety. And if you think that you suspect that you have a foodborne illness, call your local health department and tell them, hey, I think I ate at this place, or I bought this food from this person and I got sick when I ate it. Give them a call. And I know for sure on the Douglas County website that there's a place to just report things like that. In the state of Nebraska, and I apologize, the map is not updated because on the Department of Ag, the map is not updated and some of these positions are vacant. But you can see whatever county you're in, there is a person or a phone number attached to that. So if you live in Seward, you would call Lisa to ask her questions about cottage foods. So every area does have a phone number of who you can call, where you can call if you have questions. So the chart is up to date from the standpoint of phone numbers. It's just that some of the people's names might be different. So again, I put the website in here for that chart so you can find out exactly as they update the people, as people get hired or people retire, you can get the most up-to-date list. So there are only 3 health departments in the state of Nebraska that have surveyors, that actually have people that go out and survey restaurants, licensed places. They're Hall County, Lancaster, and Douglas, and the rest of the counties are all covered by the Nebraska Department of Ag. But again, use that chart and you can get exactly to the person you need to get to. One of the things that we tell you, it's not a best practice, it is the thing that you should do, is you should never prepare food when you are ill. And that's for your family, that's for Cottage Foods, that's just a rule. If you are sick when you're preparing food, you can transfer it to the food and then make a lot of people sick. So if you're making sandwiches, not that you would make sandwiches, if you're baking bread to sell for Cottage Food and you have diarrhea or you're vomiting, you can attach that to that food and you can make people sick. So you don't want to do that. Don't never prepare food when you are ill. If you have an infected wound that can't be covered, if you have a cold or you have a fever, you're contagious. You shouldn't be preparing food for others. If you have any communicable illness, you know, if you have COVID right now, not that you're going to give COVID through food, but you still should not be preparing food for others if you're sick. So, you know, making sure that, let's say you're not sick, but your child is sick and they come in and out of your kitchen all the time. You know, that can be transferred to your food. So you have to be very careful. 1 in 3 outbreaks are linked to a sick food handler. And that's a lot. One of the things, you know, is if you have diarrhea, you are contagious. You have something going through you that is contagious. So don't prepare food that you're going to sell. Poor personal hygiene is another reason people can get sick. You don't wash your hands. You're not, you know, we tell people in the restaurant industry, you should wear clean clothes and a clean apron and wash your hands and take a shower. All those things lead to good food preparation. You shouldn't time temperature abuse your food. It shouldn't sit out at room temperature. Anything that is a TCS food should not sit out more than 2 hours. So if you're baking a cake and it says eggs at room temperature, I'd run them under warm water. I wouldn't let them sit out for hours before you use them. Contaminated produce is another cause of foodborne illness, or not cleaning and sanitizing is another way you can make the food unsafe. So when you're preparing Cottage Foods, you're not going to be smoking or eating or drinking or vaping in your kitchen. Now, if you're testing the food, that's fine, but you're not going to sit down and have lunch while you're, you know, and prepare your food at the same time. A recommendation is if you're drinking something, like I have a cup with a straw and a lid. That's a great recommendation if you are drinking something while you're preparing food, you know, because the chances are if you have a cup or a can of pop or something, you could knock it over and spill it and contaminate your food. You don't want to, this is a common practice. You don't want to stick your finger in the cookie dough and try it out. And then, you know, you've touched it. So you've contaminated that. So you don't want to do things like that. You want to make sure that you are not touching your cell devices. So if you're using a recipe off your cell phone, you know, make sure that you're not continually touching that. That's a problem. That's contamination. You want to keep your fingernails short as the best practice, or not wear fake nails or polish. But if you do, just wear a glove and it's fine, because if a nail breaks or some nail polish chips off or something, or if you have long fingernails, you can get bacteria under there and you can transfer that to the food. If you have a cut, keep it covered with a Band-Aid and a glove. Don't wear a lot of jewelry while you're preparing food. They do recommend only a plain band, but you know, if you're doing Cottage Foods and you have a wedding band on, that's fine. Again, just make sure you're washing your hands a lot. You're pulling your hair back. You know, you're putting it in a hair restrainer, you're putting a hat on, or you're doing something where you're pulling your hair back so it's not flying around into the food. Once the food is prepared, you should not touch it with your bare hands. So if you bake bread, you're kneading the bread, that's totally fine to do with bare hands. Once you bake it, when you go to bag it or you go to move it, you need to be wearing gloves or papers or tongs or something. So it's important that you're not touching ready to eat foods with your hands. So that kind of segues into hand washing. When you are handling food, you need to wash your hands, and that's frequently. And we all know how to wash our hands. You know, you turn on the water, we're aiming for about 100 degrees, whatever is comfortable for you. Warm water, cold water doesn't do it. Apply a lot of soap, scrub for 20 seconds. You know, do the palms of your hands, do the tops of your hands around your wrist. with your nails, clean them with your nails. We don't recommend necessarily a nail brush because that usually harbors more bacteria. Rinse your soap off, use a paper towel to dry your hands, shut off the faucet. If you're going to the restroom, you go to the restroom, you wash your hands. You come back to the kitchen to do food prep, you'll wash your hands again. It's really important. I saw a lady in a restaurant once. I walked in with my teenage daughter and a lady was in the bathroom washing her hands and she was singing the happy birthday song. And at that time, my teenager turned around and walked right back out because she thought a crazy lady was singing the happy birthday song in the bathroom all by herself. I stopped and asked her who taught her how to wash her hands. That was wonderful. She knew that if she sang the happy birthday song, that would be 20 seconds and she would be good. So lots of suggestions on when to wash your hands. You know, anytime you think they're contaminated, you go to change what you're doing, you have to go to the restroom, all those things. Those are all times you would wash your hands. And again, it's important, you know, make sure that you're washing for at least 20 seconds to get all that off. Definitely wash before you start preparing food. Anytime you get dirty, anytime you're going to put on a pair of gloves, you need to wash your hands first. There needs to be clean hands in your gloves. You're taking out the trash, you go to pet your dog, wash your hands. You're using chemicals, you touch your phone, wash your hands. Gloves are okay. Gloves are fine. It's important though that you handle them safely. So gloves can spread just as many germs as your hands if you're not handling the gloves correctly. You know, it's not a substitute for hand washing. Use gloves for one thing, and then once that thing is done, throw them away. Wash your hands again. So if you're mixing something up and you're wearing gloves, that's great. But as soon as you're done mixing that up, take the gloves off, wash your hands, and then you can go back to doing what you're doing. So, but again, whenever you're handling ready to eat foods that's not going to be cooked anymore, you need to wear gloves. Well, a best practice is that you don't use latex gloves. Since COVID, gloves are ridiculously expensive now. So be careful though, not to use latex gloves, because if you have somebody with a latex allergy and you've touched their sourdough bread with it to put it in the package, there's enough latex left on that bread that could cause them to have a reaction. So you don't want to use latex glove, vinyl, nitrile, something like that. It's fine. At the local community college for the Culinary Institute, they use blue gloves. So in case it falls into whatever you're mixing, you can at least see them. How often do you change your gloves? Again, after one task, if they get torn, if they get damaged, in between working, you know, and at least every 2 hours, and never wash them. So one of the things that's a big thing since COVID is that people use a lot of hand sanitizer. And before COVID, if you took any of my classes, I would have told you, please no hand sanitizer ever, unless you're out in a park. So now hand sanitizer is something everybody carries with them. They keep it in their car. You know, we have to be careful. Hand sanitizer can set us up for antibiotic resistance. So we don't want to use it if we don't have to. Using soap and water is your best bet when preparing food for Cottage Foods. Again, even the health department said you shouldn't be using it at home to prepare foods. So when we talk about preparing foods, we talk about cleaning and sanitizing and keeping your kitchen safe. So cleaning is just removing soil. That's just the definition. You're removing the dirt, whether it be food or whatever. Sanitizing is reducing the number of pathogens to a safe level, which is what you do in your kitchen. Disinfecting is one step further, where some kitchens, some licensed kitchens might disinfect their tables in their dining room. Once you disinfect something, that chemical is so strong, you need to go back when it's done and wipe it off with clean water. And so it could be toxic if you don't. So in a cottage food situation, cleaning and sanitizing is all you have to do. So what's a food contact surface? It's anything that touches food. It could be a plate, it could be a pan, it could be your counter. Anything that's going to touch food is a food contact surface, and it needs to be washed, rinsed, and sanitized. And then you allow it to air dry. So we talked about sanitizer. So a hand sanitizer specifically for your hands. You may not use that hand sanitizer on a food contact surface. A food contact surface sanitizer is only used on food contact surfaces. And again, you have to follow the instructions. There was a big problem when COVID started that people were pouring bleach on their produce and people were pouring bleach on everything. Bleach can be used as a sanitizer, but you can't use it full strength. You can't pour it on things, and you definitely can't put it on food. So before you start, you're going to clean and sanitize your work area, make sure your mixer is clean, make sure the tops of your stove are clean, whatever you're using, all this equipment needs to be clean. And it needs, again, no pets, no toddlers, no parties going on in your kitchen while you're preparing cottage foods. One of the things is that before you start preparation, you wash your hands, mix up a hot soapy water bucket and mix up a sanitizing bucket with sanitizer in it. You can see that we did it with ice cream buckets. You don't have to go out and buy some fancy system. Ice cream buckets or Tupperware containers or whatever you want to use is fine. Just make sure you mix them up, you change them when they get dirty. And your sanitizer, when you mix up your sanitizing solution, whether you use bleach or a quat, and a quat is just a type of chemical, once you mix it up, you need to use a test strip to check to make sure that it's the right concentration, that it's strong enough to sanitize. So when you're mixing up a sanitizer, and I'm going to use the example of bleach because that's pretty, we can go to the grocery store and buy an EPA related bleach that will sanitize. It'll say sanitizing and disinfecting on the outside. You want to make sure you're mixing it with the right temperature water. You don't want to use too hot of water or it's going to kill the sanitizer. Make sure that you mix it up with the right amount. It'll tell you on the side. If it's too weak, it's not going to work. If it's too strong, it could make you sick or it could ruin your pots and pans. So don't do that. Again, you can use a test strip, and you can buy these test strips online at your local like grocery supply. You can buy it at Hockenberg's or someplace like that. You can buy these sanitizing strips. These stick in there, and you make sure that that is strong enough. If you're going to buy bleach to sanitize, you need to look at the label. It needs to have an EPA registration number on the back that says this will sanitize and disinfect. If it doesn't have an EPA number, it can still be bleach and still take the color out of your jeans, but it's not going to sanitize. So make sure that you're checking that. No bleaches that are April scented, no bleaches that have OxyClean in them, no splash proof bleach, because none of that will sanitize. So make sure you're checking your containers, and things like Clorox wipes and some of those wipes are not sanitizing wipes. You need to check the label. So now when you buy bleach, a typical bleach bottle is an 8.25% sodium hypochlorite solution. There are 6 and there are 7.25% hypochlorite solutions too. Check your label. Make sure you're following the directions for mixing it up. When you mix up a bleach solution to sanitize your tabletop with or to dip your dishes in, you want to use a test strip again to make sure that it's strong enough. When you use an 8.25% bleach solution, you can mix it up with a gallon of water. Only a teaspoon of bleach is all you need to get 50 to 100 parts per million. And that little test strip bottle will show you, here's 50 to 100 parts per million. Here's what color the test strip should be. Again, it doesn't take much. You need to measure, you need to test. If it's too much, it can make you sick. So this is just a real simple chart. You don't want to disinfect. You can see how strong they're mixing the bleach there. That's very strong. So you want to make sure you're using the right side of it with sanitizing and not the disinfecting side. Again, once you open a bottle of bleach, it probably will only sanitize for about a month. So make sure you're buying a small bottle of bleach and you are using it up. A sanitizer bucket, once you mix it up, you might, if you're baking all day, you might need to refill that sanitizer bucket once or twice because the concentration will drop after you use it frequently. If you mix up a spray bottle of sanitizer, you need to check that too. That usually only sanitizes about 24 hours. Then you have to mix up another spray bottle. There are lots of disinfectants. If you've had coronavirus in your house, that's a whole nother thing, but I did put that information in here. Again, follow the directions whatever you're mixing. There are tablets you can buy that are called quats that you mix with water that you can use as sanitizer, and that's fine too. Again, it has to be food grade. It has to, and you have to follow the directions. So if you use bleach to sanitize, you either dip your plate or your bowls or whatever in there for at least 7 seconds and then pull it out and it's fine. Let it air dry. If you spray your cabinets after you've washed them with hot soapy water and rinse the soap off, you spray them and leave that bleach on there for at least 7 seconds, you're good. It doesn't take very long. And bleach versus quat, the health department doesn't care what you use. Both of them are fine as long as you're following the instructions. So you figured out what you're going to sanitize with. So now you need to figure out how you're going to do that. So in most kitchens, in homes, we don't have 3 compartment sinks. So you can set one up. You can see in our kitchen, we just used a bus tub for our 3rd compartment that has our sanitizer in it. And you change those out. When the soap says disappear and the water gets dirty, you change it and refill it. When the rinse sink gets full and dirty, you change it and refill it. Same thing with the sanitizer. You can use a dishwasher and then sanitize the dishes when they're all done. Or you can do it in place. You can take your hot soapy water bucket, wash off your mixer, and then you can sanitize it and let it air dry and then put it back together when it's all done. So those are some different ways you can sanitize. Most of us don't have a 3 compartment sink in our kitchen. So again, hot soapy water in the first one, clean water, hot water in the second, and then the sanitizer in your bucket or your proverbial 3rd sink. And then you let it air dry. Where you're storing food, keep it, and these are just things that you would do anyway. Keep things labeled and dated. Keep things rotated. Use first in and first out. All your old stuff should be towards the front and your newer stuff should be towards the back. Keep thermometers in your refrigerator and your freezer. Your fridge should be below 41 and your freezer should be cold. Things should be solid. You're going to have products like milk and eggs you're going to use to bake breads and cakes. So those things need to be handled safely. Keep your cabinets clean where you store your pots and pans and your dishes. They should be clean. 6 inches off the floor. No food, no dishes, no pots and pans should ever be sitting on the floor. No cutting boards. You keep your chemicals away from your food, which is just a common sense thing anyway. You're probably already doing it. You're not going to store chemicals in a liquor bottle or in something that's not labeled. So make sure that those are stored safely. If you have pesticides in your house, store them away from your food. Store them in their original containers. So the code for Cottage Foods states that you need to package it. You need to package it in a clean, sanitary kitchen, wherever that may be your area. You don't want to hide it in colored packaging to make it look better. You want to make it look like it's supposed to. So if you're selling bread like this, you're going to package it in a clear wrapper, some sort of clear container, and then label it. You're going to label it in English with the common name of the food and the name and address of who you are. If you want to put all the rest of this on your label, that's fine. Here, instead of having a placard, it says right on the label that this food was produced in a kitchen that's not subject to regulation and inspection and may contain allergens. And then it has the ingredients of what's in there. That's all. Those are not, the ingredients are not necessary, but again, your consumer might like that. So you can include the name of the ingredients in descending order. So the first ingredient would be the thing that weighs the most, and the last ingredient would be the thing that weighs the less or the least. You might have the weight of the food on there. You might, and then again, the statement that says that it was, prepared in a kitchen. If you're labeling honey, if you're selling homemade, not homemade, if you're selling honey, local honey, it's a best practice. It's not a requirement, but it's a best practice that you label your honey that honey is not recommended for infants less than 12 months of age because of the potential for botulism. This is an example of a product label. Doesn't mean you have to use that, but it's an example of what you could use. And then a side sticker that says the food was prepared, that placard. When you're transporting food to a farmer's market, to go deliver it to somebody's house, make sure it's packaged safely. Make sure it's not going to get squished, or it's not going to get flattened or hurt in any way. You're not going to put it on the floor of your car. You're going to put it in a container to take it. Make sure that if you're selling things that, you're not going to, if you're selling ready to eat foods, you're not going to touch them with your bare hands. They're in containers. So you are done. So you don't have to take the exam. Yay. That's one of the nice things about doing the live class. What I do ask is that you do fill out the information that Terry put in the chat box. So I do have your name. I do have your address, so I can send you your certificate, and I can get you on my listserv. So I'm looking at questions now. Bake sales at churches, etc., are exempt from all this because numerous people bake items for one table. What is the rule for those type of things? You may sell cottage foods at bake sales, at churches, at craft fairs. Totally fine. Totally fine. Yes, there are just as many people selling things illegally as there are people selling things legally. So be the legal person. Let's see, what else?
He needs the information for the meat producers, one to do lard and bone broth.
Okay, so that, depending upon, Mariel, whatever county you're in, I would, they didn't know where to send you. So, okay. So Dan Kaler is the person, and I'll put his information in the box for you. Dan Kaler is the head of food and drink at the Department of Ag, and if you want to get a hold of him, there's his information. If you want to get a hold of him, he will direct you to the right place.
Does anybody else have any other questions for Cindy?
I'm sorry, I talked very fast. So like I said, I'll send you out the slides. I'll send you out your certificate. Get on the Nebraska Department of Ag website right now at lunch, register under Cottage Foods, and you can sell things this afternoon. And my information, I'll show you farther down. You don't have to go through the quiz. Sorry. My information is here. Oh, there's Dan's information too. So his information's there. All the people that, if you have food safety questions, who to talk to, here is my information. If you have any questions, there's my email, there's my phone number. Please feel free to get a hold of me. If I don't know the answer, I will find somebody that does. There's lots of additional resources attached to this, who's all helped out. So if I can be of any help, please let me know.